Hey, you guys, I wanted to come on here and talk to you about this article I came across on social media. I have spoken before in the past about how Black people should really learn to rely more on each other. I know we have this notion to think we have allies everywhere, and because of our position in the society, we have this propensity to grab for straws the moment some opportunity presents itself. And obviously, if your people were dealing with centuries of mistreatment, you'd look for relief as well. But I do feel as though there is a concentrated and almost concerted effort to shift narratives during this movement. I have been noticing over the course of this that several different movements within the Black Lives Matter movement has manifested. I see the LGBT community is suddenly trying to advocate for their community. I see posts where other factions of people are trying to throw in their struggles. And the thing about it is that while other groups may face strife in some point in their lives, it does not account for the centuries of subjugation our people have been subject to. So I found this article by The Griot, and I found it to be interesting for two reasons. One, it actually reinforces the points I've been making about how we don't have any allies. I keep seeing these talking points where people are so fixated on allies as opposed to the initial message this movement was created for, which was to protest not just police brutality, but to combat the systemic issues that Black people face in this country. And the second reason it proves what I've been saying is because other communities of people don't experience what we as Black people endure on a day-to-day basis. And before I read this article, I even want to say that I've been noticing these obscene posts where blatant fetishization is taking place. Liking a Black man's genitals is not synonymous with supporting the plight that an entire race of people face. Not only is that highly offensive and disrespectful, but it does a major disservice because that's animalistic in nature. To see value in a person's body part as opposed to everything that embodies who the person is subhuman and bestial. And the interracial agenda also appears to be present along with the fate of biracial people and or children. So I think it's safe to say that this movement definitely has been hijacked because while we can acknowledge that some things have taken place, it's ultimately more of a detriment at this point because of all of the extra movements tossed in along with ours. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the first part of this article. So it says here, Latino leaders in Chicago are calling for a truce after it was reported that Black residents were being attacked in some Latino neighborhoods by local gang members who have allegedly offered to help police deter protesters. Sunday, four Black women and a child were reportedly driving through the little village area when their car was struck 3 times with a bat as men stood in the street. In the Facebook video of the incident, which I'm not going to show, another car can be seen burning in the background. Another witness video shared on Twitter shows Latino men standing at the corner of Kedzie, not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Cermak with baseball bats as they are throwing bricks at cars driving by. Monday evening, yet another Facebook video showed a group of people with bats and metal pipes gathering near the intersection. Non-Black Latinx gangs are armed with bats, machetes, said Lou Chavez, who shot the footage. Any car that passes by with Black people in it, they are yelling at it and throwing things at it. Someone just got shot, Chavez continued, as dozens of people rushed down the block. Now there's a bunch of armed people there. Y'all will go learn y'all lesson about this Black and Brown coalition. I got into some back and forth with a few people on this issue before. Some of the people on this Facebook post saw where I was coming from as far as some of the points that I was making. And there were people who were also on that post seeking desperate approval and forming an alliance with Latins because they believed it to be the solution we needed in overthrowing or usurping the current power structure. And I won't say verbatim the entirety of the discussion, but I will say that my stance was that they seek are no different than regular people from the dominant society. I think Black people are a different variant of people from everyone else. Now, that may sound a little bit weird, but think about how these other groups of people thirst and lust after power. But it's like with Black people, we are so passive. We have a tendency to be unreceptive, and because we don't learn from history, we don't see how perceived allyship has been the cause of our downfall due to our complacency and believing other people genuinely care for our predicament. And this actually reminds me of the historical event from when the Moors were in power and ruled Spain. Due to the Moors' comfortability and contented natures around these people, they ended up losing all of their power. Question for you guys. Let's conceptualize for a moment. What would happen if suddenly Black people were the ones in power again? Let's just say in 2020, Black people run the world. The system is ours. What happens next? I mean, do we even know how to lead? And more importantly, Would we be prepared if some kind of an uprising were to occur that has the potential to create a deposition against us? And I think black people would have the power for less than probably like a year before it's lost again because we're so unorganized. We have thousands of ideas for how to approach the system currently, and we have a major problem when it comes to unity. To get back to the article, the Latin leaders called for a truce because their gang affiliates were attacking people from our community. And let me just say this, if black people wanted vengeance as opposed to equality, I think we would be a lot more feared. See, they like that we only want equality because they know we outnumber them. Sure, we may be outnumbered here in the US, but South America has the largest black population outside of Africa. And then we have Africa too. So imagine if those two continents came together and worked with us in a massive revolution. The article also mentioned that the gang members were threatening any car that had black people in it. And this is really alarming because you have to think about if there are black children in the car. These idiotic buffoons could care less because the thought of a black person just repulses them. And I really urge the black people who live there to exercise extreme caution. A subscriber reached out to me this morning and actually had told me that they live near one of these areas and that he has a family. So you guys, please be very careful up there. I want to encourage everyone to probably try to apply for like a gun permit. And if you don't feel safe with that, because I know some of you do have children, I advise maybe something like mace, or maybe something like a taser. There are measures to ensure a quick getaway. I don't think you should try and engage these people. Do what you need to do to get away from the situation because you never know if more people may show up. You never know if they could have a weapon that could cause serious bodily harm, and we just can't take any chances in these situations. And more than anything, I take safety and well-being seriously in these situations. Now, you guys saw someone was shot, so this isn't a game. They are hunting us like we're animals. And even in these protests, the police are the ones that are inciting violence by instigating a lot of these riots or turning peaceful protests violent. Some of them are undercover. They may not be in their uniform. My understanding is that they may sometimes wear all black like an agent. They may even be dressed in everyday clothing to blend in with the crowd. And in those cases, again, all I can say is to be careful. Always try and visualize the environment you're in and try to keep an eye out for anything you may interpret to be suspicious. Even if you have a gut feeling or your intuition is telling you that something is amiss, don't second guess yourself. Just leave that area. Another one of my subscribers had actually told me that he was protesting and randomly just got sprayed by some chemical agent. He told me that the pain in his eyes was so unbearable and excruciating that he needed to go to the hospital. Now, before you guys protest, here are a few things you should take with you. Always take a first aid kit no matter what. I mean, if you get a small cut, anything, you have a first aid kit readily available to assist. Now, of course, make sure you guys have your mask on first and foremost. The coronavirus doesn't just go away because the media decides the protests have a higher level of precedence right now, and that's the trendy topic to talk about. And for those who don't know, if you by chance happen to get maced by a police officer, use milk, don't use water, because the water will actually exacerbate the burning sensation. But because of milk's composition and texture, it will actually help to coat the chemicals that cause the burning in your eyes. Now, of course, bring water with you to stay hydrated, but bring milk in the case that you get sprayed in the face with some type of chemical agent. But before I get too far off course, the article said another witness video shared on Twitter shows Latino men standing at the corner of Kedzie. According to local leaders, the Latino men guarding Little Village area are members of the Latin King Street Gang. A cop friend just texted me that the Latin King sent a message to the cops in his town that they would take care of the rioters and to not come around, tweeted Fox News' Johnny. Are we in an episode of Sons of Anarchy? The system is corrupt and they want to see minorities fight against one another to weaken us, said community activist Montserrat Ayla, who helped organize a peaceful protest in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement over the weekend. We need to work together to dismantle racism. Tuesday, Chicago elected officials and community leaders denounced the reports of violence against Black Chicagoans by Latinos, calling the move a distraction to the protests taking in George Floyd's name. Let me just pause for a moment here. It doesn't surprise me that the cops were working with the gang at all. I think when we really take a look at the design for white supremacy, it's a complex design. No matter the circumstance, the root of it is surrounded by a large layer of immorality. This facade that society puts on about minorities working with everyone and being being so diversified, it's a facade. They have no intentions of that. And I told you guys to be careful of using words like people of color and minorities because that translates to everyone who is not a white American man. I'm honestly annoyed at this point with this kumbaya, we need to work together approach that everyone keeps bringing up because while I understand that a certain level of cooperation is needed for there to be change, very rarely does that end up happening. And that's because other people's intentions are not made clear from the beginning. Brings me back to the point I made at the beginning where I was talking about all of the other movements being incorporated into our movement because at first it was just about Black Lives Matter. Then it started to turn into this LGBT agenda. Then somehow interracial unions got tossed into the mix. And then some other communities got mixed in because from the beginning no one was honest about why they wanted to extend a hand in helping us with this system of oppression. And if you really want my honest opinion on this so far, I don't think anything is going to change for the betterment of Black people because if that happens, it means a significant shift in power would need to occur, and the people from the larger society are not going to let that happen. They look at it like, oh yes, we'll pretend to help you if that'll shut you up, but we aren't going to let you have more power than us because then we become irrelevant. And if you Black people really understand the power that you already have to take us out, then we really won't matter. And that's the way that I look at it, includes that article. But I will just say this before moving on to the next part of my video. Black people must be cognizant of the actions of others around them. And I think we should learn to be more analytical with our responses to situations and start using critical thinking skills to determine how decisions and acceptance of allies may affect you later on as opposed to reacting with emotions. Because again, when you think with emotions as opposed to logic, it almost always ends in disaster. It really impairs your judgment. Since many of us don't think with foresight, let me just say this. I really don't think this movement will bring about change because if Black people are fighting for equality, this means that we want to be treated equally. This is one of the things Black people already fought for during the Civil Rights Movement alongside integration. So we're fighting for equality, but we're not fighting for power, which is what would essentially elevate our status in the society. I really don't understand how we're so fine with equality since their perception of equality is how we're already being treated. Everyone is only saying something now because it would almost seem abnormal for them not to at this point. And like I said, white supremacy, it is strategic in the way that it moves. It can take unpredictable turns. It has outmaneuvered Black people on so many occasions in the past, even in the form of fake support. And I can't quite understand what this system is trying to accomplish currently, but I can only speculate. It's not anything good based on history. Now, the next story I want to cover is really not even worth talking about, but I came across this tweet made by Terry Crews, and I had spoken on him previously. It seems as though he's relentless on proving how much more of a liability he is at this point rather than an asset. Terry Crews made a series of tweets, and I really don't even know why he still talks. I mean, anything he says at this point really shouldn't even be taken seriously. I myself looked at it and said, oh, what's Crazy Terry talking about now? And I have to say, the comment section, while it was comical, told a lot of truths. First off, there's no such thing as Black supremacy. It does not exist. It's not even in legends, none of that. I have never heard of Black people oppressing an entire race of people, killing their children, castrating the men, denying people basic human resources, quality of care, any of that. So for him to begin to insinuate that we somehow have the power to be racist, which is basically what he's saying, these two things are similar to each other. If you have power to do any of the things that I just mentioned, you truly have the power to be racist or supreme to others in that sense. You know, I thought he was portraying a character on the movie with white chicks, but the more that I listen to him talk, I'm really beginning to think that he wasn't playing. I think he was dead serious on that movie. I mean, why does he have this almost sort of like persona about himself where it's like, I'm the funny Black guy that I want everyone to like me, never to be taken seriously? And I can't speak for everybody else, but again, I try not to pay Terry Crews any minds. That's why I said the sooner we stop listening to these celebrities, the better off we'll be. They're meant to entertain because every time they speak on racial politics, it comes off very immature. They end up putting their foot in their mouths half the time, and I just don't have time for it. Now, there is something completely off topic that I also want to quickly address, but I keep seeing this trend on social media by Black people, and it's equally annoying, but I'm seeing where some Black people keep shifting attention off the systemic issues and placing it back onto Black people, and that's extremely disingenuous. While we can admit that our own community needs work in numerous areas, that doesn't mean we can just ignore another major problem that directly affects our community on a routine basis. The black on black crime, another black person did this to me. I mean, I see all this on social media, and I have to come on here and explain to you guys why this is a problem. Black on black crime is a deflective talking point mostly used by people from the dominant society in an attempt to try and absolve themselves of any wrongdoing by saying, oh, well, how can we be the problem if you guys kill each other? And it's really sad when that same rhetoric is regurgitated by black people, especially during this time. I know that we hurt each other, and like I said, it does need to be addressed. But we shouldn't address it right in front of the people that oppress you, because what this does is it gives them more ammunition to use against you and your community when it comes time to face these people. And it's kind of like, yes, we do need to talk about this, but not right now. You have that annoying faction of black people who are so adamant and insistent that it needs to be discussed right now, and it's just more of the same unification problems. Maybe we aren't ready to take on white supremacy. I'm just going to say that right now. You can always count on us being our number one worst enemy. And ultimately, that's what I find to be most unfortunate. And I think we also need to understand that the very system that we rely on to give us accurate stats and facts when it comes to these ideations typically will falsify the reports to give off the appearance that we're somehow so violent towards each other. And that couldn't be further from the truth. You're more likely to experience crime for those who are within your immediate vicinity, such as a burglary, meaning a white person will more than likely burglarize another white person. An Asian person on the Asian continent will more than likely commit some kind of a crime against another Asian person, and a black person will more than likely commit crime against another black person. Not saying this is exactly how it goes, probability will more than likely follow this formula. So that's my thoughts on this mirage of a coalition and crazy Terry Crews. Let me know your thoughts on this way in below on the comment section. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.